Is it right there? Yes. So I get to tell a senator what she should do. How fantastic is that?
Wow. Great lights.
Thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us. We realize that we are the only thing standing between you and lunch, and so we will keep you on time as we move through this so we can still break for the lunch. Our summer school students do get released at noon, so it is important that we break at 11:45. So we're here today to talk a little bit about Senate Bill 2186. We'll talk some about how it came to be, and we'll talk more importantly about what we plan to do with it. So Senate Bill 2186 is a result of 4 years of work. Actually, it's a result of more than 4 years of work. It's a result of generations and decades of teachers saying, I want to continuously improve my craft and sharpen my saw so my students can be ready for their future. And I spent 24 years in the school systems in North Dakota before I became the state superintendent. And in those 24 years, I consistently heard the parents, my colleagues, my students talking about how if only we could do this, if only we could do that. And there were so many limitations in policy, and there was so many limitations and expectations and administrative rules. Some of those were federally imposed regulations and expectations, some of those were state expectations, policy and rules, and some of those were local policies and rules. And so I'd heard that desire and that quest to say, how can we do things differently? And suddenly, you know, in the 1980s, there was this report that came out, Goals 2000, or A Nation at Risk, and the nation began talking about how can we do things differently and how can we provide more flexibility. But we always seemed very confined with these rules, these policies, and these laws that really bound us. And so coming into the state superintendent's office with that experience and with that knowledge, I knew it was important that we have that conversation in North Dakota about what can we do to begin changing and providing the flexibility to our professional educators that are with our students every day and bring that to our classrooms across the state of North Dakota. So with that, 4 years ago this month, we gathered a group of educators, leaders, classroom teachers, curriculum advisors, superintendents from across the state, from big schools and small schools, and we said, let's take a look at what is really binding us and holding us back from preparing our students for their future. The very first step that we had was we brought some researchers in, and they did a policy scan of North Dakota's administrative rules and century code. And they identified for us some areas that they felt were a bit limiting. And then we took a look at what we wanted to do. What else is happening out there? We had the same facilitator. It was the Marzano work group out of Colorado. We had the same researcher bring to us what was going on across the nation and gave us some set of goals. And we met several times, and we were going to come up with a game plan, an idea to introduce to our legislative session in 2015, actually, to begin having some opportunity for us to break free. And we as educators, just educators alone, from small school districts, large school districts across the state from all levels, we would begin to put something down on paper. And we would have discussion about, yes, that will solve it. But then a teacher or an administrator from a school from the other side of the state would say, yeah, that's not going to work in my school districts. Or that's not going to work in my classroom. That's not at all the way that we operate, and it's not at all what we desire. And so we would start over and we would put something else down on paper and say, yes, this is it. And then our great leaders, our great educators in the room would say, yeah, that's not going to work for us. That's not our challenge. That's not our desire. That's not what we want to create in our schools. And that's not what our community will embrace. So we weren't ready for the 2015 session, and we realized that our work needed to continue. And we studied more. We consulted with leaders from across the state. We consulted with leaders from across the nation. In their school districts, we learned that more and more states were taking some bolder steps. We learned that more school districts were taking some bolder steps. They were offering lessons learned. They were providing relief from regulations. They were increasing expectations for things called competency-based education or mastery of education or project-based learning. And then, as a collective group, it dawned on us what Posse said this morning is so very true. Education is so very local. It is so very local, and it needs to be driven at that local level. Because, as Ken said, what a community desires for their graduate is going to be different, but it's important that that community come together. And by community, I don't mean just school community. I mean true sense of community. The businesses, the parents, the school board members, the leaders in the school, the teachers in the classrooms, everyone in that community. What do we want our children to graduate being able to know and be able to do? And so that's when we decided the Innovative Learning Bill needed to have that element of local control, that there wasn't a single answer that was going to be prepared for someone. And the best ideas are going to derive from the people in the community and those that are in the classrooms with our students every day. And so we proposed a bill called Senate Bill 2186, and we were ready for the 2017 session. And we felt very confident that the answer did not lie with the Department of Education, not at all. It didn't lie with our legislators, but it really lay within all of our teachers, our leaders, and our community members helping their schools be successful. So the beauty behind Senate Bill 2186 is it is not a template for you or for your community. It doesn't have the answers, but it allows communities to develop their own ideas to do exactly what we're asking our students to do. There's a problem there. What's the best solution? To be messy, to try something new. Make sure that you have the support of your school board, of your teachers, of your community. But what is going to be best for you? This bill and Senate Bill 2186 and now will become law in August 1st. And it doesn't say anything but you as a community, you as a school district can develop a plan. And if there is a state policy, administrative rule that is standing in your way, you can come to the Department of Public Instruction with your plan and ask for a waiver for that policy or rule. The bill does have certain measurables and expectations. Previously, some school districts took advantage of a waiver that already existed, a waiver to do time differently, for professional development. But this was the first time in our state's history that we were asking schools to think differently on a wholesale way, to truly be intentional about their thought process about what do we want to change? What is our goal? Let's start with the end in mind. Then to work with their community, develop a plan, receive approval from the Department of Public Instruction, and then help us share those ideas across the state. So the people that you have sitting in front of you, 4 of them, the first 4 are our legislators. And then we have 2 superintendents, as Levi mentioned, that are going to share with us today what that journey was like after we had the bill written. We had it filed and introduced and then filed, and we set forth in the 2017 session as we entered this journey. So I'm just going to sit with the panel right now, and I'm going to ask each of these good people to share with me a little bit about themselves, where you're from, who you represent, but most importantly, what it is that either as legislators caused you to be a champion, a sponsor of this bill or a champion of this bill, and to get behind it in a way that you did. To our superintendents, what was it about this bill that you were watching, that you were eager to see if it was successful, and that you were hopeful about, and why you were watching this as it moved through the session? So I'll start with you, Senator Oban.
My name is Erin Oban, and I represent a district in central Bismarck here. I originally grew up in Ray, North Dakota, so every time I approach discussions about education, I can't take away the 18 years I spent in a small Class B town, in a small community. But since moving to Bismarck, obviously, taking an interest in how different education is in larger school districts as well. The reason I wanted to be a part of this frankly, is because of the story that Superintendent Baesler just said. I wanted to be a part of it because it was not my idea. This was coming from people who know best what is needed, what needs to change, and it didn't take a lot of convincing for me to be a part of it when Superintendent Baesler had done so much work leading up to it in hearing from school districts across the state on what those needs are. And it was a very unique opportunity to be a part of something that is not partisan, that is not geographical specific, that was not rural versus urban. Those are discussions that are so important, and to be a part of that process where you could show everybody, I think, in the Senate, which was my goal, in Senate Education Committee and then the larger Senate chamber, to show the importance of this across such a broad base. And I was really fortunate to be a part of that. And after we had passed it in the Senate the first time, to get emails from my Senate colleagues from both sides of the aisle, some from Fargo, some from smaller towns, and say, this is really exciting. I wish this would have been what we sought when I was in school. I think that is, for me, the way government is supposed to work, is when you listen to the people who are in the field, and you don't just assume that you know best because you have some elected office for a short amount of time.
I'm David Rust. I'm from Tioga, North Dakota. I represent the Great Northwest. Her hometown, yes. All of Divide County, all of Burke County, all of Williams County with the exception of most of Williston and a portion of Montreal County, about 5,000 square miles, thereabouts. And I have been involved in education for a lot of years. I started teaching at Gwinner, North Dakota. I was a math and English teacher there for about 7 years, and then I kind of went to the dark side and became an administrator. Was a superintendent at small town of Judd, Regent, and then Tioga for 28 years. And in my experience at Tioga, not only was I an administrator, but there are different points in time where I also taught classes. And I saw Senate Bill 2186 as a big idea bill. It has the potential to revolutionize the delivery of education to students. And the bill as it came to us actually was quite short. We, as good legislators, made it longer. Part of the reasons is that when you looked at the bill, there were some things within the bill that, maybe concerned us just a little bit to begin with. One is that we really, and I in particular, believe in local control, okay? And part of the bill said that the school could apply for this, and it didn't seem to be anything in there about a school board accepting that. And since we all know that our local schools are locally run by school board members who are elected by the people within their district, we felt it was important that the school board would have to approve that, or maybe even initiate that process, whichever the case may be. Another part of that dealt with the bill was written to give the superintendent of public instruction the ability to waive any statute. That actually raised an eyebrow or two. Any statute is a lot of statutes, I mean, could she say, yeah, you can drive 85 miles an hour on every state highway?
No.
Could waive any statute. So that was, I think, an area of concern, and probably even became a little more of an area of concern in the House than it did in the Senate. So that was another thing that we dealt with. And then looking at it and making sure, we've had an educational system that has worked pretty well. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of things that we say that, you know, it's the same way as it's been 200 years ago or whatever else. And in my time frame of working in schools, I've seen a number of things come and go. And a lot of times we come back to some of the same things that we've been using over the years that have worked reasonably well. And you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. In my opinion, though, this is a big idea. I believe it is a process and not an event, that in the next years, couple of years, 3 years, you will see schools, a few schools that will try it. You'll see some schools that are going to sit back and take a wait and see attitude. I'm sure that 2 years down the road, we may see a tweak in the bill where we find some things that probably need to be addressed that we didn't see. But it really has the potential to allow different ideas. And if education is to continue to progress, we cannot sit back on our laurels. We have to try new, innovative ideas. And are some of them going to fail? Yes. Some may succeed to heights that we never dreamed of.
Thank you. Representative Guggisberg.
Thank you. Representative Ron Guggisberg, and I'm from District 11 in Fargo, pretty much the opposite of Senator Russ' district. It's probably one of the more urban districts in the state. I can actually walk across my district.
Thousands of impressions, yeah. So that's when you go.
So the reason I became interested in this bill is because I work as a firefighter in Fargo in my real job, and been interested in the public sector and innovation in the public sector and how we get there and the diffusion of innovation. And to describe it, I'm going to steal an analogy from Chris Borbaum, who
Super engaged, so
Okay.
that's
from the Extension Office at NDSU. We were at a meeting similar to this, and he used an analogy that I would call in defense of silos. And he explained how silos can be the best thing for seeing into the future and seeing what's out there in the world, but you have to climb on top of them, and that's dangerous. And that led into a discussion about how do we get the people that are in this silo, they're comfortable, they're protected, how do we get them on top of the silo with, you know, the people in a room like this, you're gonna be fighting each other up the steps to get to the top of that silo. And so the discussion revolved around the protection cage around that ladder, and that's what we need to be. And I think you know, maybe we use the word innovator and leader as a title a little too much. That they aren't titles, they aren't people. It's something we do, it's an activity we do. So by being that safety net, we encourage all those people in the silo to get up, innovate, lead. And I think we have two things going for us in North Dakota that make us prime for this, and they are our communities. I believe the number is 89% of school that approve of their schools, communities approve of their schools. That's incredible. It's the best in the nation. That's one of our safety nets. Another is, and sometimes unions get a bad rap, but I think in North Dakota United, instead of being an organization that builds the walls of the silo, they definitely are one that works with administrators and says to their members who look to them for this protection that, you know, hey, it's okay. We're going to go up this ladder. We're going to ask you to take a little risk, but the reward when we get on top is going to be worth it. And so I think that's two things we have going for us, and why I'm interested in innovation in education.
Good job, Ron.
Thank you.
Now I have to follow Ron. I'm Cindy Schreiber-Beck, and I'm a representative from District 25, which I could walk across if I had any health-conscious mind, but I'm down in Wapaton is where I live, but a lot of Richland County is in my district, as well as a very small portion of Cass County. So why did I become a champion for this 2186? To me, it's about the kids. And I'm a former speech and language pathologist and now a business owner, and I own a couple of businesses, but having come out of the education system and working as a specialist for all those years that I did teach, I often wondered why some of my kids actually came to school, and especially at the high school level, because they came to fail every day. And I don't know if I would have been in their shoes if I would have come in to fail, because they had some special needs, and we always didn't address those very well. So looking at the student perspective, I felt very strongly that this bill would be a catalyst for the districts and to keep in mind all the students. And we have a lot of issues with students today, all the way from our kindergartners through our 12th grade. And can we keep these students interested in learning? And would this provide some of the mechanism that is necessary to keep these students engaged? And I felt that it possibly was. And again, is it perfect in its form that exists today? Now, I would have rather that the superintendent of public instruction been able to waive any part of code that relates to education. But that wasn't going to work that way in the body that I happen to be in. So, and I remember the first time I met Superintendent Baesler shortly after I was elected. She was meeting with new legislators, and I went up to her office, beautiful office if you haven't been there. And I think some of my parting words were, North Dakota can have the best education system in the world because we're nimble, we're small, and it isn't necessarily about the money. Money is extremely important. I do understand that. But we have the capacity, because of the size of North Dakota, and also I have to give credit to the teachers and administrators and our local communities. I think we want to move our students forward, and we want to have students that can succeed at any level that they want to do. So I think I've answered those questions. I have to look at my notes here. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
So Superintendent Burgad and Superintendent, yeah, I think so. Okay. So Assistant Superintendent Burgad and Superintendent Steiner, I know that you were watching this as it moved through the legislative process, and you have each done some things in your schools already. So talk to us about what your experience is, what you were hopeful for as you were watching Senate Bill 2186, and your emotions or your desires as we were moving this bill through the legislative process.
Well, it's an honor to be on stage with my former mentor, David Rust.
No longer.
I was a superintendent up in Northern Cass and then at Stanley prior to Northern Cass, and David and I were close colleagues. We had many road trips together, and like I mentioned, he was my mentor being a young superintendent, and I have to admit, David was the lecturer and I was the learner on those road trips. Another thing that ties into 2186 is I had a lot of seat time with him, and I earned my A with David. So it was 2 Fridays ago, I was sitting in my office with Dr. Denise Jonas, our CTE director, and I kept saying to Denise, we have to do something for these students coming out of middle school to follow their passions and their dreams. We have to do something. And she goes, well, it comes in the form of a pathway. And that's where we came on to the idea about establishing a CTE pathway in the technical reading and writing that would allow students to learn at their pace and follow their passions. So I think what 2186 does, it turns our conversations into what ifs to why don't we do this? So that is our vision next year, to start building this pathway for our students. And I told Dr. Gross and Dr. Steiner, who are in our consortium, that we can't do this alone. We really have to do this together through collaboration. So those are just one of the things that we're excited about. There's many more, but we're limited in time, so I'll throw that one out.
Thank you.
good. Yep, I've got mine. I'm Cory Steiner. I'm the superintendent at Northern Cass, which is a school district about 25 miles outside of Fargo. When Senate Bill 2186 started to be shared with us, I got really excited, and I got excited for a couple different reasons. And one is that in North Dakota, what we have is we've got great teachers, great leaders, great students, and great parents. And I hope everybody realizes in here, that's what every other state is begging to have. That's what every other state wants. So we have the foundation in this state to really achieve great things. And as we looked at this bill, I thought, is this our opportunity? In North Dakota, being a conservative state, we tend to wait for someone else to do it, and then we try not to goof up like they did. And that's a problem. And I think there's got to be a point in North Dakota where we stop tinkering and we start transforming education. And we needed a way to do that. And the way to do that was through 2186. And for some of the administrators in here, I think it did two things. One of it is there's no more excuses. I can't blame Superintendent Baesler or our legislators for a seat time requirement or for administrative rules. I can't do that anymore, because now it's on me as a leader, and it's on my staff and my kids and my parents to make a change. And I think what I would say is we have great people, we have a good system, and there's no reason we don't have a great system. This finally gives us the permission to create a great system. That's why I'm excited about 2186.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I get a little equal time?
Really?
Well, you know, he says I was a lecturer and he was a learner, and
You're about to prove that.
and anybody who's worth their salt realizes that the young guns, and that's what he was, got great ideas, and that's true about this bill. I mean, it's the young people and the innovators that are going to help do some things that are maybe totally different, that maybe the older guard wants to say, well, that ain't gonna work. But it's the young guns and it's the innovators that are gonna make this bill
Very good.
do great things.
Thank you. To our legislators on the panel, there's a provision in the bill that requires that we at the Department of Public Instruction work with our school districts to take a look at these plans, have them identify stated goals, and how they're going to measure those goals. And then I will, in turn, report that to the Legislative Interim Committee in preparation for the 2019 session. So as you look forward to 2019 and we present that information and we share that information with the legislature about what has been done since it passed in 2017, what is it that you're looking for? What do you hope to see in that report, and what do you hope to do with that information in the 2019 session to further this road that we're on?
What I want coming out of this, I think, in hearing about what schools are doing, I think I want two things. I want to see schools taking risks and doing big things to better the lives of their students. And from a legislator's point of view, I want us to be patient. We have become so, and I don't mean legislators specifically, but in society, we are so about immediate gratification that we don't give things some of the time we need to see the benefits and the challenges of doing things differently. And unless we show some patience in seeing what schools like these up here are doing, we can't expect anything to be different if we think it's going to be immediate.
I would say that what I would like to see is, I don't want to hear a report from a superintendent. I don't want to hear a report from a principal. I would like to hear a report from students and parents as to what some of the innovative things they're doing or have tried has meant in their lives. I expect the superintendents and principals to tell me great things, but I would rather have some parent or some student come before us and talk about what happened at their school, even if it isn't as polished a speech, but I think it'll come from the heart and it'll give me an exact idea of whether or not it's working or not working.
This is a hard question. I mean, my signature on my email, my legislative email is, "In God We Trust, everybody else better bring data." And so, data, and I think that is why government sometimes has a hard time being innovative, is because we can't see the bottom line. We don't have that metric that we're looking for to innovate and go towards. And I suppose this is where I'm supposed to give the answer of, this is the metric I want to see. To be honest, I don't know what I want to see. And I'm hoping that people in this audience can give us something that makes sense and makes us understand that by giving you the freedom to teach better in different ways, you can show us that you're improving the lives of our children and communities. So I don't have an answer is my answer.
Got any data?
No data.
Yeah, we'll ask Ron for data. You know, education is probably the most important committee I serve on, and education is the most important in the whole state. I guess we always have to have the funds. But if we don't have a good education system, I don't think this state can move forward as a whole. And I thank you in the audience for being part of that and making that happen. As we looked at 2019, I think what has to happen prior to 2019 is this can't happen in a vacuum, and so often in education, everything happens in a vacuum. It happens within the four walls of the school, and we don't do a lot of work advertising or marketing what the purpose is of this and how we're going to move forward. With the community involvement in 2186, which is, you know, basically the requirement, I foresee that this should not happen that way, but we have to be cognizant that the marketing piece is essential to move this forward. Talk to people, move people, get them interested. And therefore, when Superintendent Baesler reports to us, what I'm looking for is what needs to be additionally changed or changed additionally. You know, this, as I said before, this is a catalyst. 2186 is only the catalyst. There are so many unique things that can be happening with 2186 in place, but it's still going to have some boundaries. So you need to talk to your own personal legislators so that we can erase some more of those boundaries to move our students in the direction that we want to and make them successful members of society. So you are the constituent, and our students, although we'd love to hear from them and we want to hear from them, and they are constituents as well, it seems that they sometimes don't carry as much weight as you might with your own legislators. So I look for more change. This is just the beginning of great things. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are very encouraging answers from our body of legislators, and I need to express my appreciation for that, to hear patience. We can't have our schools, our teachers whipsawing from this to the next and back and forth. It's been happening too long in our schools for too many decades. So to provide the patience is a very important factor. To hear from our students and our parents about how is this really impacting. Data speaks, but stories really tell the story. And personal stories really tell the tale. The answer of no answer, I'm not sure. That's where we came to as a group that was developing this. We knew that it wasn't going to come from us. We knew, we've been saying for a long time in education, we're measuring the wrong things. Filling in that bubble isn't what we're supposed to be measuring. And we're measuring the wrong things and holding our schools accountable and punishing them for the things that aren't that important. And the question is always, well, what is important? Well, thank you for letting us figure that out so we can provide that to you. So you haven't set up a predetermined, this is what we want to see, and we can figure that out as professionals. And the idea of, yes, this is just the beginning. Help us tell the story to the rest of our constituents, to those that are a little reluctant to really trust the change that our students need for their future. So I do have to say it's been an incredible journey with you through 2017 session. I deeply appreciate the hours and the work that you did with your colleagues in each of the chambers to tell this story, to provide us the support we needed. Yes, I would have liked the entire, at least chapter 15.1, if not the whole century code, but we'll get there in 2019. So to our superintendents, I'm going to break this up a little bit, if I can. At first, I want to ask Dr. Steiner, there are two-part questions. So what steps do you believe are essential in pursuing innovative school reform and restructure? And secondly, as a small school, what are the advantages of pursuing innovative practices in small schools?
In terms of steps, I think the first thing that you're going to need to do is you need to identify who are your runners and figure that out. And I don't just mean in your school, I also mean in the areas. Like Dr. Burgad and I are meeting next week to talk about what's the collaboration look like between West Fargo and Northern Cass in moving some of our things forward. So you have to look and you got to find those partners throughout the state that can do it. You're not going to be able to do it alone in your district, and you're not going to be able to do it just with the people in your district. You're going to have to pull expertise from outside, and that's scary, but it's got to be done. What's the advantage in a small district? There's probably less red tape, to be honest, that the big districts have to go through, and that's not a bad thing. It's just when you're managing 25 school buildings, that's 25 buildings that each have a unique culture that you're going to have to try to figure out how do we all get them going the same direction. We have everybody in one building. When we want to have a meeting, we have everybody at that meeting. I think that gives us a more captive audience to push forward. And one of the reasons I think that we're pushing forward with our proposal and feel like we're going to be successful is because we have a smaller audience.
So that leads me to my final question for Northern Cass before we open it up to the audience. So you have a draft proposal that you've shared with the Department of Public Instruction. I've had the pleasure of reading and reviewing. It's incredible, and the ideas are aggressive, and they're going to be so beneficial. So what is your idea? If you could share with the audience what your idea, what your vision for innovation at Northern Cass is, and then finally, for those audience members who are out there saying, how do we do that? How did you start?
If you see me kind of cringing in my seat, it's because I've had a pit in my stomach for 2 months since we started putting this proposal together because I'm terrified about what it's going to be. This all came about when a parent sat across from my desk and looked me in the eyes and said, "You're killing my kids' ability to love coming to school." And they weren't talking necessarily about me, but they were talking about our system. And I couldn't live with that. And so I got our administrative team together and said, I never want to hear that again. Like, we are not doing something right. And this was a kid that did really well in school and played school. He was a straight A student. He didn't need us. We just got in his way. And so we said, what can we do different? It has to be different than this. And so what we kind of came down to is we need to customize the learning that takes place in our school. So next year we will start with an 8th and 9th grade cohort of students in a seed project. We don't call it pilot. Pilot goes away in a year. Pilot is what we jump the thing, one thing after another. A seed project, we plant it and we're going to grow that thing. It's never going away. So our 8th and 9th graders will now be taking their core classes in a completely customized manner with blended learning, not only using the teacher online, but experiences in the community. That'll allow them to control the pace. We control the space. It's their job to control the pace. I firmly believe this, and I will die as an educator on the idea that if you truly say you do what's right for kids and you love kids for who they are, you will meet them where they are at. We are not meeting kids where they are at right now, so those kids can go. We will help them, we will guide them, and conceivably, their junior and senior year will be spent doing nothing but electives, passion areas, working with the CCCTEC, which is our Career and Tech Consortium, and in senior year, I don't want to see them in our school. I want to see them in businesses, in true internships, in job shadows. I no longer want at graduation to see undecided on the bottom. I don't think they have to know exactly what they want to do, but they need to know what they don't want to do. And we've not given them that opportunity when you say you have to be in our school for 5 hours a day taking government and U.S. history and all these courses when they could have been done with that and they could have mastered it. And that's led us to the bigger discussion that we actually have 20 teachers who will spend 4 days this week and we are going to go to mass customized learning in Northern Cass over the course of 3 to 5 years. We will eliminate grades, and I don't mean 100%, 90%. I mean there will no longer be a first, a second, a third, a fourth grade. It will all be based on proficiency, and it will be based on standards and the essential outcomes and learning targets where kids will be at. It's a massive undertaking. It's a massive undertaking. Like I said, I'm really scared. I had a parent say to me, "So you're going to experiment with my kid?" And I had to say, yes, we are. We do it every day with kids, to be honest with you. But what it's going to become is it's no longer going to be about what the teacher does. It's going to be about what the student does. And that's what we all want anyways in our room. We all say it, but now we're going to try to figure a way to do that. How did we start this conversation? We started it by bringing in 2 grades of parents. We had, out of our 70, we had 55 parents show up. I always say, what's that called? It's called a basketball game when that many parents show up. So we had 55 parents show up, and we had a meeting. We had a real honest conversation that we want to flip the script and change the whole way we do business. And it was a conversation that was full of some conflict. There were a lot of people that didn't like the idea, but we slowly worked through it. We sat down with our board for a half a day and said, we need to change it. Let's look at it different. We sat down with our teachers. We got them to say, would you commit to this? And then we really then just started jumping in and starting the plan. We have proposals where PE is no longer, I love it, Tom Schmidt said it perfectly. Why are we doing PE in a gym in our classrooms? It just makes no sense. Why aren't they out hiking? Why aren't they doing things that we can link science and English to? So we have kind of this broad plan of just changing the whole way we do business, where learning takes place in the real world. And the stuff in school, the minutia, we can do a little bit of that, but that's just a place to house them. And so that's kind of what we're looking at doing, and
Very good.
I hope it works.
Thank you.
Dr. Steiner makes me want to go back to school.
So Superintendent Burgad, different perspective for you in West Fargo, a large school system in the state of North Dakota. But West Fargo has truly been a pioneer for a long time in piloting new and groundbreaking ideas and programs within the district. And you have gone down this road in several ways. So I will ask you, what have you learned from these pilots that you have encountered, these models that you've rolled out? And when stepping back to reflect, are there adjustments you would make if doing it again?
What we've learned is that type of learning should happen in all classrooms. But what we also learned, it's very difficult to do in a large system, and it's got to be very strategic. It's got to be very systemized, and it's got to be planned out. So what we had to do is identify what are some of the core focuses or the core foundations that teachers need to do and have to be effective in the classroom. And those come in the form of relationships, a strong assessment and engagement, the literacy of reading and writing, and then the 21st century learning opportunities leaning towards the personalization to capture students' motivation and make it meaningful, their learning experiences. But what we also learned within that, those focuses within our professional development, they also have to be personalized for our teachers. So we developed a professional development plan to allow teachers to have a choice where they're at on those focuses to build it in. So that was very important. We definitely want to continue to grow. We want all our classrooms to have those, and all our students to have those experiences to reach towards that personalization. So that's a couple of things that we learned.
Thank you. So finally, your vision for West Fargo. I mean, fastest growing in the state, and that kind of overshadows everything else that you're doing academically because you're growing so rapidly in student numbers. But as you look forward 5 years, what is it that you hope people see when they look at West Fargo's school system as in terms of innovation?
Well, I love the idea of the portrait of a graduate. I think that was a great takeaway today, and I think that's the first thing that we need to do is go back and say, what does our graduate look like? I think we have a strategic plan in place. I think we have identified specific goals with measurable indicators, but I think identifying what does our graduate look like. And like I said, we're hopeful that all our classrooms provide and afford students that 21st century learning opportunity that leans and stretches towards personalization to make it meaningful and to motivate our students to follow their passions and dreams.
Thank you very much. And to our two superintendents and to all of our educators in the audience, what you've heard today from our two educators on the stage is what I hear all the time: commitment and passion and risk-taking, and their desire to really make sure that our kids are successful to pursue whatever they choose to do when they leave our schools. And that is why I was much less reluctant to have that very short bill that we introduced, because I trust our community leaders, I trust our educators, I trust that they know our students, and I want to be able to give them that open table to say, this is what we can and should be doing for our students in our community. And I truly believe that when we come to you in 2019, that you will see more examples of what Dr. Steiner is talking about, what Dr. Burgad is talking about, and we will convince you that these are the people that are in charge, and our public school systems with the 89% approval rate will skyrocket even more as far as acceptance and approval by from our parents, our community, and our students. So thank you very much. With that, I think, so here's what I'm looking at the clock right now, and so when I was running staff meetings back in my school days when I was in school buildings, it was start on time, end on time, but we were bumping up against when our students will be dismissed from summer school, and it could get a little congested in the halls. And so I think we're going to open it up to the audience questions, and we will make sure that we'll give the students some time to process out of the hallways to the schools, and we will break for lunch in about 15 minutes, which allows us some time from the audience to ask our administrators and our legislators some questions. So we have mics coming around. And we have a question over there. Thank you.
I know that's so.
Hey, how y'all doing? Good to see you again. Most of you, anyway.
You should introduce yourself.
My name is Mary Johnson, Representative District 45 in North Fargo. You know, I sit on Education Committee as well, and with Ron and Cindy, and you know, I have said more than once that as a school bus driver of 11 years, and I've witnessed some sort of declining parental involvement in children's education. And perhaps even a teacher here could set me straight on that. Is there less participation in parent-teacher conferences? Because I'm thinking one of the metrics I'd like to see out of this whole project is greater parental involvement. And how can we incite children if we cannot incite their parents? Anybody? Does any teacher see less parental involvement over the years? I had an absolutely back behind me here. And regarding one of the constraints, I didn't get to ask the question of the last panel, but one of the constraints of this that I really don't want to see, and perhaps beyond the implementation of these innovative programs, is streamlined teacher involvement. And in that, I mean, we're going to lose a lot of teachers because, and this goes back to what I said previously, teachers and administrators also have to be parents these days. And it is unfortunate. And I'm not worried about anybody's kids of anybody that's in this audience. I don't worry about those kids because we're all here for a reason, and that's those kids. I'm concerned about the little guy on my bus. Finally, there was a little guy I could not reach. He had zero respect for authority. He mouthed off. The principal at Lewis and Clark got on my bus and rode the bus, sat next to him. You couldn't get to that kid. And I'm wondering, what kind of home life does this kid have? And how are the teachers and administrators dealing with it? And I just hate to see, as she pointed out, the time being taken up of teachers. So if this program is going to streamline teacher involvement, and so they have the time to address all these issues, behavioral issues, lack of parental involvement, I see those problems more so than I do any budgetary constraints. So maybe Dr. Steiner could address parental involvement, and now you're from a smaller district, so maybe there's greater parental involvement.
No, I mean, that's always a tricky question, and I'm going to probably, maybe I don't answer the question the right way. I tell our teachers we have a lot of conversations that I can't go home with kids at night, so we're going to stop worrying about the things we can't control. So we don't have a lot of conversation about how do we get parents more involved, because if they don't want to be involved, I can't go home at night. And there can be more damage done in 17 hours when the kid's at home than I can do good in 7, and that's unfortunate, like part of the job, and that's really tough. But we have tried to focus on, and this isn't innovative because a lot of you do it, but what we did to address that concern is we said, let's figure a way to mentor the heck out of those kids in school, not only with great adults, but with great students. And so what we did in that same situation, because we're having those issues, we trained our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, and we now have a set mentoring time that they're going in and meeting with those kids. Taking the idea that I don't know that I'm gonna fix mom and dad. And knowing 99% of the time, I think all of you would agree, I'm not gonna fix mom and dad. So what can I control? And the one thing I can control is that time that they're in our building. And so we have taken it on ourselves to kind of say, that's an issue, it's a problem. Now with our customized learning, the one thing that's nice about that is to be in our cohort group next year, you have to commit to coming into the building 4 different times for conferences, for meetings. So we had that requirement, and that's contracted out. We think we can go bigger and do that when we go more customized, but again, time will tell with that. But yeah.
I think Representative Johnson brings up a good point, the demands on our teachers' time. So several of us on this panel had an opportunity to travel out to visit some schools out in Maine, and there were about 20 of us. And Maine has passed some legislation that by the year of 2018, all of their high schools must be competency-based, must be a competency-based diploma. And so they're further along in this journey than we are. And one thing that I realized in having conversations with the classroom teachers, with the administrators in the building, with the parents that were there, because it was National Teacher Appreciation Week, so a lot of the PTOs were at the high schools and the schools, elementary schools, providing support for their teachers. One thing that came through loud and clear is that in order to do this, we have to remember to provide our teachers the time to collaborate, the time for professional development, the time to set those common expectations, those measurable targets. And we are placing additional demands on our teachers, and so that's part of this gig, that's part of this deal. And we have to walk what we talk. I think you heard Aiden, one of my student cabinet members, talking about, we know about the 4 C's, but do we really provide them the opportunity to practice the 4 C's? I would ask that same question of us as leaders. We want our teachers to collaborate. We want this integrated discipline process, but are we really allowing them the time to get messy with this, to develop this? So we have to do that as leaders as well. The other thing is you know, the behavioral problems, you can't, I couldn't agree more with what Dr. Steiner had said. We can't control that, but if we can make kids really excited about going to school again, so many of those discipline problems fall away. And what Apple says about if you have to manage yourself, then you're unemployable. Well, you know, imagine an environment where they are really self-managing because they want to be there. I'll never forget a student of one of the schools said he doesn't really like school, but his first class of the day is welding, and he loves welding. And so whatever it takes, you know, if he loves welding and that got him out the door at 7:45 in the morning because he didn't want to miss welding, then let's capture what's happening in welding and that learning design that is making him feel successful enough to get out the door at 7:45, and let's replicate that for the other 5 periods of the day. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say that I appreciated both Dr. Steiner's passion with taking this project by, you know, the horns, but I wanted to dovetail on what one of the representatives said about this being about the kids and the special needs that many of the kids have. If I think about this Senate bill correctly, I think it's giving us the freedom to design curriculum, to design programming that's innovative and that is a little bit more particularized, but it's a two-way street as well. And so I'm wondering if the legislators have thought about how they might not just worry about schools doing their part, but also giving parents the opportunities to make choices with regard to schooling that might better fit according to the particularized school options that might be available to them based upon this Senate bill and the new innovation that could come from it.
Can I clarify, just to make sure, you're talking about school choice or charter schools, or could you be a little bit?
I think there are
I'm
many.
not sure where you are, I'm
no,
sorry.
Yeah, right here, I'm sorry. You can't see me because I'm in black and I match the rest of the chairs, but I don't have the answer, but I do think that we have to remember that parents are the primary educators of their kids. And the decisions that they want to make about their the educational decisions for their children is the primary thing. The catalyst that led Dr. Steiner to kind of undergo this transformative process was an encounter with a parent who was worried about what their kids were receiving in the school. And so if we're really, worried about local control and constituents, parents are the ones who are the primary educators, and we have to collaborate with them in a way that meets their particular needs. So is that something that you think would be, it's not just program delivery, but it's also putting the program in contact with the right people that fits their needs?
My experience has been, in the 41 years I was in education, has been predominantly in smaller schools. And I think this bill has the potential of allowing, especially those smaller schools, they could essentially become a charter school. I mean, there's a potential for them to turn it into a charter school if that's what they really kind of want. It may not have the name charter school on, but it has that potential. And as you're well aware, there are private schools, there are home schools. We don't have a law in North Dakota for charter schools. There is not one yet on the books. So those are basically the three options that are there: public, private, homeschool,
And
home education.
Before I let the other legislators weigh in on this, I just want to clarify that Senate Bill 2186 is open to public, private, to all of our schools. Even our private schools have 5 criteria that they must meet for school approval. And so it allows some opportunity for them to be innovative as well. The 92% of our students are in the state of North Dakota, 113,000 plus. 92% go to our public schools, 6% are educated in private schools, and the remaining 2% are a combination of our BIE, which are federally controlled schools, tribal schools, state institutional schools, and our homeschooled. And so that's kind of the makeup and the demographic of it. But this bill, Senate Bill 2186, was very clear in saying it needed an approval, that it was open to any public or private school. Public or non-public, I understand, is so it could be open to those BIE schools, that would be open to those state-run schools. And that's a very important piece, is that yes, there is innovation that is required for all of our students, and all means all. So I will just wanted to clarify that, and I'll let the legislators weigh in on.
Well, I'd just say that, so I wouldn't, the idea of the bill is to give freedom to local schools and communities, and so I wouldn't get too excited about asking us about what the metrics should be or what you should be allowed to do. The idea is you decide, and it's up to the local communities. And I just have to say, Representative Johnson, I missed you. Always ask the questions that makes us so uncomfortable and that need to be asked, and the points that need to be brought up. And this is about more than just the education system. It's more than school districts. It's our community's health. And so when you're working through these ideas and trying to address certain problems or with students, you're going to have to look outside of the school district too, maybe with your local public health unit or the city or county or whoever it may be. But it needs to be addressed, and Representative Johnson brings up some very important points.
What I think this bill allows for is the competition people are talking about. I don't care what you call, I don't care about charters, I don't care about private, I don't care about, we have a system that works, and this bill just lets you go that next step, no matter what system you're in. So I think the competition now, in my mind, is going to be created between communities who are going to embrace this, or communities who are going to say, what we have now is fine. I had a parent come after we passed this bill in the Senate, and kind of sees a boogeyman around every corner, and that's fine. It gave me an opportunity to try to describe what I think this is in a little bit greater detail. And I said, if you don't want your school to do anything differently, then I guess go tell your superintendent that. What this allows is for real leaders in education to take this further if their community supports that. So to me, that's the competition we're looking for. If it's competition within Bismarck Public Schools, if it's competition between Wilton, New Salem, and Bismarck, when you're in this, parents can take their kids to any of those other districts if they so choose. So I don't get hung up on this whole charter, private, whatever you want to call it. I'm focused on making education better no matter where a kid is going.
I can comment, but I would only be an echo. So, but it is, you know, that's the whole piece to this 2186 is local control. So that's where the parent input should be. And hopefully all the leaders at the school take that to heart and see where the parents, but it can't be just one isolated parent, you know, squeaky wheel type. It needs to be a consensus of parenting. And as one person put this in our committee, this is an opt-in. It's not an opt-out. So, thank you.
We have just a few minutes left. To affirm, I believe, that understanding of school choice and the competition, that this really will drive competition. There's not a lot of choices for our Class B schools. There aren't many small towns that have multiple choices of a school to go to, but there are schools within driving distance, or there are schools in this district that actually send buses into another school district to pick up students because those students and their parents have chosen that school district A is a better fit for their child than school district B. And so there's that agreement and that understanding between those school districts that they are better able to serve certain students' needs. Dr. Steiner, I know that you have several students that are open enrolling into Northern Cass. I don't know the statistics, but maybe you could share that.
30%, so 180 of our students open enroll into our district. So it's a large percentage. And you know, for us, that means we have to have a phenomenal product because we rely on those students willing to cross our borders to ride the bus for a long time, and we bus in 95% of our kids. So it's a huge piece for us. That's one reason that our community said we need to be innovative because we do have to compete. Even though we'd never want to do it, we have to compete with other districts for kids.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question over here. I'm very intrigued by the 4 Cs, the student B. I hear about the family needs. I hear about the internships. It seems like a really broad array of needs and expectations. Have we come to the point maybe that the school year should be 12 months? Can we really do all of this without just really working on it all the time and really not parcelizing children's lives when there is so much to accomplish?
Yeah, we're quite excited at West Fargo Schools in our After School 21st Century grant. We have a STEM Academy that happens in the summer. And I just spoke to Candida Braun, the lady that runs it, our advisor, and dean of Cheney Middle School. And she mentioned that last year, the first time it happened, we had to beg students to want to participate. And it was a vision from Mr. Adam Gaylor to do this academy, and it's wonderful. He is now the high school principal at Jamestown. So I just wanted to throw a shout out there for Jamestown and Adam Gaylor. But this year, the sign up, we're at capacity. The students love to come to the summer academy. Teachers that put it on do STEM learning activities. They also build capacity in their professional development, so it's definitely a win-to-win. How many times do you hear middle school students begging to come to summer school? So it's a great program.
And Senator Mathern, thank you very much for that probing question. I think it just does really affirm the limitless possibilities that this bill has allowed, and a different way that we as a nation of educators are beginning to think about how can we do education differently. But I really need to point out about that school calendar that there are no limits essentially in our century code at this point that would prevent any school district from running a year-round school. Our century code simply states that a school district must have a minimum number of days anywhere from July 1st until June 30th. So schools could essentially start in July and end whenever they wanted to. We have many school districts that go beyond the required number of contact days for their students. And so that authority, that opportunity exists within our communities at this very moment. And it's just dependent on our local community's decision about what do they want their 21st graduate to look like, and how do they feel is the best way to make that happen for them. So it is 12:16. I think if we will be around, if you have any other questions, let me ask for your help in thanking our fantastic leaders and legislators.
Thank you.